When people think of the Aztecs, they imagine golden temples, epic warriors, and calendar magic. But the real action? It's in the weird stuff they don't teach you in school. Like why grown men dressed as birds to die on purpose, or how spilling blood was basically a daily to-do. Behind the shiny pyramids was a society running on rules that feel like they were made during a heat stroke. And somehow, it worked. So strap in mentally, because this is 33 of the most mind-twisting, face-palming, and wildly entertaining facts about the Aztec Empire. 1. So, you're an Aztec parent, and you're a little short on cash. What do? Get a side hustle? Nope. You head down to the local market and sell your kid. I'm not kidding. It was basically the Aztec version of Craigslist, but for your offspring. But here's the truly American part. It came with a return policy. If you suddenly hit the jackpot on a scratch-off ticket, you could march right back and buy your kid back. It was like a long-term human rental service. And get this, if the new family was mean to little Timmy Tepple, you could complain to management, get a full refund, meaning your kid back for free, and the abusive new owner might get tossed into slavery themselves. It's the most insane customer satisfaction guarantee in history for a product you literally created yourself. 2. Everyone wants pearly white teeth, right? We have Crest white strips, fancy electric toothbrushes, and dentists who charge a fortune. The Aztecs had a different solution, one that was organic, locally sourced, and absolutely disgusting. Their mouthwash of choice was pee. Not just any pee, but aged, fermented pee that had been sitting around long enough to get extra spicy. They'd collect it, let the ammonia concentrate to weapons-grade levels, and then just gargle away. In their minds, they were using advanced chemistry to disinfect their mouths. In reality, they were swishing their own recycled waste products. So next time you complain about the taste of minty Listerine, just be grateful your morning routine doesn't involve a jug of what Dave from accounting left behind last week. 3. You think festival season gets weird now? The Aztecs would laugh at our tame little gatherings. Their idea of a wild party involved getting absolutely blitzed on poison from a toad. The cane toad has glands that ooze a powerful hallucinogen, and the Aztecs were all about it. This wasn't some refined process. They would either straight up lick the toad, which is a sentence I can't believe is historically accurate, or they'd scrape off the goo, dry it, and smoke it. Forget microdosing. This was the original hero's journey. It was the ultimate party flex, risking a painful, convulsive death just to see some pretty colors and chat with a feathered serpent god. It makes doing shots of Fireball seem like a responsible life choice. 4. We all know that toxic, on-again, off-again couple on social media. The Aztecs had a foolproof solution for that kind of drama. The death penalty. You could get divorced, no problem. The courts would hear you out. But if you and your ex later decided to give it another shot, if you crawled back to each other and got remarried, the government would have both of you executed. That's it. No second chances on your second chance. It was the ultimate state-enforced, we are never ever ever getting back together policy. The Aztec HR department for relationships had exactly one form, and it was your death warrant. It's a pretty effective way to make sure that when you break up, you really mean it. 5. Forget calming music, breathing exercises, and mood lighting. When an Aztec woman gave birth, the delivery room turned into the set of a Rambo movie. The midwife's job was to act like a screaming drill sergeant who just found contraband in your bunk. She'd get right in the laboring mom's face and start shouting ferocious war cries, basically bullying the baby into coming out. The whole thing was framed as a battle. The mother was a warrior capturing a new citizen for the empire. If she died, she got a warrior's funeral. It's the most intense motivational speaking gig ever. Imagine trying to push a human out while a tiny angry grandma screams, "Give me 20 more centimeters of dilation, maggot." 6. This one might be the dumbest fact in all of human history. The Aztecs knew what a wheel was. They completely understood the physics. Archaeologists have found their kids' toys. Little pull-along dogs and jaguars with perfectly functional wheels. So what did these brilliant engineers do with this world-changing technology? Did they build carts, chariots, anything to make moving giant multi-ton stones for their pyramids easier? Nope, they kept it in the toy department. So you have little Aztec kids rolling their wooden pets around while their dads are dragging massive blocks of obsidian up a ramp on their backs like absolute cavemen. It's like inventing the smartphone and only using it as a coaster. The level of inefficiency is just chef's kiss. Magnificently stupid. 7. The Aztecs had a sport called Ollamaliztli, and it was basically death pong. The ball was 9 pounds of solid rubber, and it moved like a cannonball. The goal was to smack this thing through a stone hoop high on a wall using only your hips, thighs, or elbows. Getting hit by the ball could cause massive internal bleeding or just kill you on the spot. But here's the best part. Sometimes the prize for being the winning captain was to be honorably sacrificed to the gods. Let that sink in. You play the game of your life, you're the hero, the MVP, and your reward is getting your still-beating heart ripped out in front of a cheering crowd. It's a sport with 0 good outcomes. You either lose, get maimed during the game, or win and get murdered. 8. You know that awkward moment when you have to sneeze in a dead quiet room? The Aztecs took that social anxiety and cranked it up to a lethal level. If you were visiting a sick person and you let out a sneeze, it was considered a supernatural death sentence for them. There was no Gesundheit, or bless you. A sneeze meant the gods had looked down, said, nah, he's a goner, and your sneeze was just the celestial confirmation email. Imagine the pressure. You're trying to be a supportive friend, holding your sick buddy's hand, and you feel that tickle in your nose. You'd probably break your own nose trying to stop it because a little blood is way better than being the guy who literally sneezed your friend into the afterlife. 9. The Aztecs had the most bizarre drinking laws on the planet. If you were young and got caught drunk in public, it was a one-way ticket to a public shaming, getting your head shaved, or even being beaten to death. But if you managed to survive their lethal sports, poisonous party drugs, and bad medicine and make it to the ripe old age of 70, congratulations, you just unlocked the ultimate achievement, the legal right to get absolutely unapologetically wasted whenever you wanted. The law basically said that once you hit 70, you were a national treasure who had earned the right to be a public nuisance. It was a government-sanctioned retirement plan where the only benefit was being able to drink polka from a fire hose until you forgot which century it was. Respect your elders, because Grandpa Netzahualcoyotl is about to do a keg stand. 10. You think your middle school bowl cut was bad? The Aztecs institutionalized terrible hair as a matter of public policy. Young men attending the Telpachcali schools, which were for the common folk, were subjected to a mandatory, government-issued haircut that was specifically designed to be ugly. It was a long patch of hair at the back of the neck with the rest of the head shaved. It looked ridiculous, and that was the entire point. It was a state-sponsored program to destroy vanity before it could even start. Imagine an entire generation of young men walking around looking like they got into a fight with a lawnmower and lost. It wasn't about education. It was about ensuring that no one could get too handsome and upset the social order. Your spirit couldn't be broken if your hairstyle already was. 11. Catholic guilt has nothing on the Aztecs. They had a goddess named Tlazolteotl, and her divine superpower was literally eating your sins. This wasn't a metaphor. Once in your entire life, you could go to her priest, confess every single horrible, depraved thing you'd ever done, and the goddess would chow down on your moral filth, leaving you pure as the driven snow. It was a one-time only, all-you-can-sin spiritual buffet. You had to save up all your lying, cheating, and stealing for one epic, soul-cleansing confession. I just want to know what sin tastes like. Is adultery spicy? Does blasphemy have an oaky finish? It's the ultimate divine cheat code, allowing you to live like a complete degenerate and then wipe the slate clean with one cosmic meal. 12. Imagine you're an Aztec general. You've spent months training thousands of elite warriors. They are psyched. They are painted for war. They are standing at the edge of an enemy city, ready to conquer and capture prisoners for the sun god. The tension is immense. And then, from a nearby tree, an owl goes, "Hoot!" And you, the general, just throw your hands up. All right, everyone, Pack it in. The owl said no. The vibes are off. This actually happened. Military campaigns, entire invasions, were canceled because of a poorly timed bird sound. The enemy must have been so confused, watching an entire army turn around and leave because of a nocturnal bird. Aztec military strategy wasn't about tactics or numbers. It was about appeasing a universe that was apparently run by a committee of extremely moody animals. 13. According to the Aztec creation story, the gods were basically running a divine bakery that kept failing health inspections. Their first attempt at making humans was out of mud, but they just dissolved in the rain, a total flop. The next batch was made of wood, but they were stiff, stupid, and had no souls. So for their third and final attempt, the gods used the best material they had, maize dough. That's right, humans are literally walking, talking corn tortillas. We are the successful result of a cosmic cooking show. This explains everything. Why do we love chips and salsa? It's a primal instinct. We are reconnecting with the dough of our ancestors. It also means the gods looked at a pile of cornmeal and said, yeah, I can make something that worries about taxes out of that. 14. In modern society, we spend fortunes on contacts and laser surgery to fix our vision. The Aztecs went in the exact opposite direction. One of their highest standards of beauty was being cross-eyed. It was considered so noble and attractive that parents would actively try to induce it in their children. They would dangle beads and little trinkets between their babies' eyes, desperately hoping to mess up their alignment permanently. Look at the shiny object, sweetie. A little more to the left. Perfect. Now you're a 10. It's a world where your ability to look at your own nose was considered the peak of fashion. Every family portrait must have looked like a contest to see who could look in the most directions at once. It's beauty, but with a permanent headache. 15. The Aztec pantheon was full of wild characters, but the headliner was a god named Tezcatlipoca, a name which means smoking mirror. And they took that name very, very literally. This all-powerful god of night, destiny, and sorcery was depicted as having one of his feet completely replaced by a polished obsidian mirror. Not a cool sword leg or a laser cannon leg. A mirror foot. How did he even get around? Did he hop? Did he just have the most terrifying limp in the universe? It's the least practical prosthetic imaginable for a deity. It combines cosmic power with the constant, nagging fear of stubbing your divine mirror toe on a celestial coffee table and shattering into a million pieces. It's proof that even gods can make questionable fashion choices. 16. We all know someone who takes their property lines a little too seriously. The Aztecs took it to a level that would make your grumpy neighborhood dad look like a chill hippie. Their laws on property were simple. If you moved the stone marker or fence post that separated your land from your neighbors, the punishment was death. There was no court case, no polite discussion over the fence. You mess with the boundary, you forfeit your life. It's the ultimate get-off-my-lawn policy. It must have made for some incredibly tense neighborhood barbecues. Hey, Axolotl, your corn is looking great this year. By the way, if you even think about moving that rock 6 inches, my family will be dancing on your grave tomorrow. Pass the guacamole. 17. Every culture has its weird delicacy. The French have snails, the Scots have haggis. The Aztecs looked at their pristine lakes and thought, you know what looks delicious? The scum on top and the bugs floating in it. One of their prized foods was Axolotls, affectionately nicknamed lake caviar. But it wasn't fish eggs, it was the eggs of waterflies and other aquatic insects, painstakingly harvested from reeds along the shore. They'd collect these tiny eggs, dry them, and then form them into little cakes or patties. Imagine being the first guy to pitch this idea. Okay, hear me out. We scrape the fly eggs off the swamp reeds, mash them into a nutrient-rich brick, and call it fancy food. It's the culinary equivalent of turning pond scum into a gourmet experience. This wasn't a starvation food, it was a sought-after treat, proving that one man's bug-infested swamp is another man's 5-star appetizer. 18. Fashion police in the Aztec Empire didn't just give you a citation. they gave you a death sentence. In their deeply stratified society, clothing wasn't about personal style, it was a rigid social uniform, and the most heavily enforced rule was about cotton. Only the nobility and high-ranking warriors were allowed to wear soft, comfortable cotton garments. If you were a commoner, a mechiwali, you were stuck with scratchy, rough fibers from the maguey plant. If you dared to defy this rule, if a simple farmer decided to treat himself to a comfy cotton loincloth, the punishment was death. It was a capital offense to be too comfortable. Imagine living in a world where wearing the wrong fabric could get you killed. It's the ultimate example of dress for the job you want, going horribly, horribly wrong. 19. If you think people overreact to things today, you haven't seen anything like the Aztecs during an eclipse. For them, a solar eclipse wasn't a cool astronomical event. It was a full-blown cosmic horror show. They believed the sun was being eaten by a sky monster, and this could signal the end of the entire universe. Mass panic would erupt in the streets. Pregnant women would hide indoors, terrified that the darkness would turn their unborn babies into mice. People would scream, cry, and bang on drums to try and scare the monster away. And most disturbingly, they ramped up human sacrifices, frantically offering hearts to the gods in a desperate attempt to convince the sun to come back. It was an organized, nationwide meltdown over something we now watch with flimsy cardboard glasses. Their entire civilization was one bad celestial event away from a complete psychological collapse. 20. The Aztec military had one of the most fearsome-looking weapons in the ancient world: the macuahuitl. It looked like a giant wooden cricket bat studded with razor-sharp obsidian blades. Up close, it could inflict horrific wounds, capable of decapitating a man or even a horse. It sounds terrifyingly effective, right? Well, it had one tiny, catastrophic design flaw. Obsidian is basically volcanic glass. It's incredibly sharp, but also incredibly brittle. So, while the first hit was devastating, the blades would often shatter on impact with enemy armor or bone. This meant their legendary sword was essentially a one-hit wonder. You got one good swing, and then you were left holding a heavy bladeless club. It was a weapon that was both a terrifying killing machine and a piece of disposable garbage at the same time. 21. Forget naming your kid something trendy like Aiden or Sophia. Aztec parents had a naming system that sounded like they were picking a password for their Wi-Fi. Many children were named after the day they were born on the 260-day ritual calendar. This calendar combined a number from 1 to 13 with one of 20 day signs, like rabbit, reed, flint, or monkey. This resulted in a society full of people with names like 7 deer, 1 rabbit, or 12 lizard. Imagine trying to discipline your child. 1 rabbit, if you don't clean your room right now, you are grounded for a week. It also meant that on any given day, thousands of people were celebrating their birthday at the same time. It's a beautifully systematic and deeply impersonal way to name your offspring, turning them into walking, talking calendar appointments. 22. We've already established that wearing the wrong fabric could get you killed. But the Aztec fashion police didn't stop at the torso. They went all the way down to your feet. Sandals, or cacti, were also strictly regulated by social status. The emperor and the highest nobility wore sandals made of gold and adorned with precious stones and jaguar skin. The lesser nobles got less fancy versions. And the common folk, they got simple fiber sandals, or more often than not, just went barefoot. If a commoner was caught wearing a pair of sandals that were above his station, even if they were just slightly nicer than regulation, it could be considered an act of treason. The punishment? You guessed it. Death. In the Aztec world, your entire life could be forfeit because you decided to rock some footwear that was a little too fancy for your social class. 23. Tenochtitlan was an incredible feat of engineering, a massive city built on a lake with canals for streets. But when you have a city on water and a population of over 200,000 people, you have a serious sanitation problem. Their solution was ingenious, convenient, and utterly bizarre: canoe-based public toilets. Men in canoes would paddle through the city's canals, essentially acting as a mobile septic service. If you needed to go, you'd just flag one down like a floating taxi, do your business in a container on the boat, and they would paddle off to a collection point. The collected waste wasn't thrown away. It was a valuable commodity sold to farmers as fertilizer. So the Aztecs not only invented the floating bathroom, but also a perfectly sustainable, closed-loop system of human waste recycling. It's both brilliant and deeply unsettling. 24. Sometimes the Aztecs got tired of waiting for a proper war to break out to get the sacrificial victims they needed for their gods. Their solution was something called a flowery war, or Xochitlal. These were pre-arranged, ritualistic battles between the Aztec Triple Alliance and their enemies, like the Tlaxcalans. The rules were set beforehand, almost like a deadly sporting event. The primary goal wasn't to conquer territory or wipe out the enemy. It was specifically to capture enemy warriors alive so they could be taken back to Tenochtitlan and have their hearts ceremonially ripped out. It was a war with quotas. Imagine being a general briefing your troops. Okay, men, we're not trying to win today. We just need to capture about 50 guys for the sun god's big party next week. Try not to hurt them too badly. We need them in good condition for the ceremony. Let's go. 25. Attending a religious festival in the Aztec Empire was not optional, and neither was your mood. During their many festivals, which often involved days of feasting, dancing, and watching people get sacrificed, it was mandatory for everyone to be cheerful. Showing sadness, boredom, or anything less than ecstatic joy was considered a grave insult to the gods being honored. It was a state-enforced good time. Think about the pressure. You're watching a priest hold up a still-beating heart, and you have to have a massive smile plastered on your face, shouting, "This is great! I'm having so much fun!" It's like being at a corporate team-building event, but with a much higher body count. You had to party like your life depended on it, because in a very real way, it probably did. 26. We've touched on the Aztecs' complicated relationship with alcohol, but let's be crystal clear about the stakes. For the average young citizen, there was absolutely no 3 strikes rule for public intoxication. There was a 1-strike rule. If you were a commoner and got caught drunk for the very first time, the punishment was often death, usually by stoning or being beaten to death in the public square. It was the ultimate zero-tolerance policy. There was no, "I was just celebrating a promotion," or "it was a rough Tuesday." One bad night out could literally be your last night out. Meanwhile, the nobles got a little more leeway. Their first offense might just be getting their house torn down and losing all their titles. It's a society where a hangover wasn't the worst consequence of drinking too much. 27. Every culture likes to think they're special, but the Aztecs took it to a cosmic level of arrogance. They didn't just believe their capital city, Tenochtitlan, was the center of their empire. They believed it was the literal center of the entire universe. They called it the Axis Mundi, the navel of the world, the point at which the heavens, the earth, and the underworld all connected. Their great temple, the Templo Mayor, wasn't just a building. It was the sacred engine that kept the cosmos running. This worldview meant that everything that happened outside their city was just background noise in their grand universal drama. It's the kind of supreme confidence you can only have when you genuinely believe the sun won't rise unless you personally make sure it does. It makes New Yorkers who think the world ends at the Hudson River look humble. 28. Forget veneers and teeth whitening. The height of Aztec dental fashion was to have your teeth sharpened into points like a piranha, and then have them blinged out with precious stones. This wasn't a practice for just a few edgy individuals. It was a widespread and respected form of body modification, especially among elite warriors and nobles. A skilled artisan, essentially a proto-dentist with a flair for jewelry, would use a drill to file down the teeth and then expertly inlay little discs of jade, turquoise, or pyrite directly into the enamel. The desired effect was a smile that was both dazzlingly beautiful and utterly terrifying. It was a way to show off your wealth and your ferocity every time you opened your mouth. It's a bold fashion statement that says, "I'm rich, but I will also bite you." 29. We think of smoothie bars as a modern invention, a place to get kale and wheatgrass blended into a healthy sludge. The Aztecs were way ahead of us on the sludge front. A key part of their diet, especially for the common people, was something called tequitlatl. This translates to stone excrement, but it was actually spirulina, a blue-green algae that formed a thick scum on the surface of their lakes. They would skim this protein-rich goo off the water with nets, dry it into greenish cakes, and then mix it with things like tomatoes and chili to make a sort of primordial smoothie or sauce. It was incredibly nutritious, packed with protein and vitamins, but you have to admire the courage of the first person who looked at a slimy green pond and thought, "I'm gonna eat that." 30. In the Aztec world, your feelings could literally kill you. They had a recognized medical condition called tlazochemia, which was essentially death from sadness or lovesickness. If a person suffered a great emotional shock, like the loss of a loved one or a brutal romantic rejection, it was believed their heart could literally shatter from the grief, causing them to wither away and die. Aztec physicians wouldn't just tell you to get over it, they would treat it as a legitimate and often fatal illness. It wasn't just a broken heart in a poetic sense, it was a diagnosable terminal condition. It's a world where being ghosted on a date could potentially show up on your death certificate as the official cause of death. 31. The Aztecs had a complicated relationship with the Axolotl, the real-life Pokemon that lives in the lakes around Tenochtitlan. On one hand, they revered it. According to mythology, the god Xolotl transformed himself into an axolotl to hide from being sacrificed. So, the creature was literally a god in disguise. On the other hand, they ate them. Axolotls, along with frogs and fish, were a regular part of the Aztec diet. They would roast them and eat them with corn, sort of like a divine taco. Imagine the cognitive dissonance. You're eating an animal that you simultaneously believe is a sacred deity who just happens to be delicious. It's like finding Jesus, and your first thought is, I bet he'd taste great with a little salt and lime. 32. The Aztec military career ladder had a very simple, very violent first rung. To go from being a commoner soldier to achieving any kind of rank or status, you had to do one thing: capture a single enemy prisoner in battle. That's it. Your entire promotion rested on your ability to subdue an enemy warrior and drag him back to your lines alive. It didn't matter how many enemies you killed. Killing was fine, but it didn't get you a raise. The Empire needed live bodies for their sacrificial ceremonies. This created a bizarre battlefield dynamic, where warriors were less focused on winning the war and more focused on this violent, high-stakes game of tag. It was the ultimate performance review, where success meant a promotion and failure meant you were probably the one getting captured. 33. Most governments try to prevent mass panic. The Aztecs, on the other hand, put it on the official state calendar. Every 52 years, they held the New Fire ceremony, which was essentially an organized nationwide panic attack. They believed this was the moment one great cosmic cycle ended, and the gods could simply decide not to start the next one, plunging the universe into eternal darkness and allowing horrifying star demons to descend and eat everyone. In preparation, every single fire in the Empire was extinguished. Families would smash all their pottery, hide their children, and lock up pregnant women for fear they'd turn into monsters in the dark. Then, the entire population would sit in absolute, terrifying blackness, waiting to see if the priests on a mountaintop could successfully light a new fire in the chest cavity of a freshly sacrificed victim. If they failed, that was it. Game over, universe. It was the most stressful national holiday imaginable, a mandatory, state-sponsored, "Are we all going to die tonight?" a party. So that was the Aztecs. Part genius civilization, part fever dream. And now it's your turn to confess. What's one modern rule, law, or everyday ritual so ridiculous you'd expect it from a society that worshipped corn gods and played deathmatch soccer? Seriously, name it in the comments. Be specific, be savage. And if you think history's weirdest moments deserve their own arena, smash that like and subscribe. We've got plenty more madness where this came from.